Brian Hogan, Jim Wyrick, and Robert Martin. No. Billy Joel, Tim Minchin, and Tom Lehrer. No, that's not quite it either. Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Penn Jillette. No, let's go with Jason Robert Brown, Stephen Sondheim, and David Yazbek. Nope, that doesn't work either. Hi, Vlogalogue. The topic for this week is inspirations, and I'm having a hard time with it. The thing that I find fascinating is I was listening to watching Alex's video. He was talking about, particular inspirations. He talked about his parents, and I would certainly talk about my parents too. He talked about Bill Nye and Miss Frizzle. And I'd even throw Mr. Rogers in there, because figuring out how crayons are made, that's fascinating. That certainly imbued my sense of curiosity. I want to talk about, I find it fascinating that we look at our lives and we have this kind of conception of who we are and how we got there. This is something that I noticed a long time ago. I think first when I tried to make a Draw My Life video. I think I did make a Draw My Life video. And I looked at it, and I every so often I go back and I watch it and I go, wow, this completely bypasses huge components of my life. And I've been interested in kind of behavioral economics recently, and kind of that field of psychology. And we have this idea that basically there's a distinction that's made between the experiencing self and the remembering self, and talking about this idea of System 1 and System 2, that our conscious selves, pretty much the only reason we have a consciousness is to try and post-rationalize all of the decisions that we've made in our lives. So me, as currently a software developer, when thinking back on the big influences in my life, the first thing to come to mind would be like, well, obviously there are people that have made a huge impact on my software career, and that's that helped shape who I am today. But at the same time, it is a coin toss that today I would be a pianist, in which case I would say, well, Billy Joel obviously was a huge influence on who I am today. Or I could be an actor or a writer or a philosopher. And the story that I make up, kind of thinking back about my past, would differ wildly based on where I presently am and what my goals are and how I think of myself. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's really hard to talk about inspirations. I will say that there's one characteristic, and that I think that the people that have had the most profound influence in my life are people who you don't know. They tend not to be brands. They tend not to be the widely known personalities. And then I don't know how much of my own personality is shaped by, all of that. I think back on I don't know where my life is supposed to be. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. I don't even know who I want to be. But I think that it's really, really, really hard to talk about inspirations, because there's such a tendency to say, this is who I am today, and when I play back my history, I can talk about if I decide today that software engineering, computer science is the field that I want to end up in and make my stamp in, I can easily spin a story that won't be a lie. I can talk about how I used to sit on my dad's lap and play DOS computer games, and that would have this computer keyboard out there, and he'd play with the arrow keys and the command and control keys over there, and I'd play with the command and control keys on the other side of the keyboard, which must have been the most excruciatingly miserable experience for him. If I end up being a comedian, I can equally talk about how in kindergarten I discovered that I could be popular by quoting funny things from Disney movies, that the appropriation of stuff that I hadn't invented but somehow I had recognized was funny somehow garnered a small amount of popularity. If I wanted to talk about how I became a musician, I could discuss how I sat down with my piano teacher at the age of 4, and I still remember her teaching me about skips and steps. She was Romanian, so skips and steps were pronounced a little bit differently, and I didn't realize the distinction, so I would talk about how, I was learning this cool stuff about skips and steps, and it was awesome. Or if I ended up being an actor, I could talk about how my cousin decided on a weekend, just on a whim, to take me to a community theater set construction day, and how I met this 90-year-old guy, and we just built stuff together, and he became super best friends. And how that kind of spurred my interest in just watching the whole experience of the Hello Dolly production, and having both created it but also completely oblivious to how orchestrated it was, and just being able to realize that I was sitting here and watching something that just was somehow so much more than the sum of its parts, that I could get lost in the story despite having seen how the sausage is made. We have this... It's so easy for me to tell you that I am who I am, and that these are the causes and these are the people who helped me get there. And I am so dreadfully fearful that by even beginning to go there, I'm going to omit so much of my life and the people who have had a profound impact on my life. So as far as inspirations go, I don't know, everybody that I've interacted with. Those are just the examples that come to mind, and I'm terrified that by restricting it to that subset, that I'm omitting people who have gone out of their way to be incredibly kind and generous. Don't ever write off the way that you interact with people. Don't ever think that making a small gesture toward people doesn't make a difference, because every time that you talk to anyone, every time that you interact with someone, you are shaping who they are in a really profound way. Those are my thoughts. Have a good week, Vlogalogue.